All right, before we start the podcast, I just want to usually do it at the end of the podcast, but gonna ask you to please subscribe to the YouTube video if you're watching on YouTube. If not, subscribe to us on iTunes, Podbean, be a follower, that sort of thing, so I can kind of keep track of how many people are listening, that sort of thing. I can look at the analytics, but really nice to get some subscribers. The subscriber deal is there's no strings attached. They don't send you anything. It just lets you know the next time you jump onto YouTube that there's a brand new video from us on there. That's it. So it's free. Just subscribe if you would. Thanks. If you get to the end of the podcast and you hated it, unsubscribe. It's not going to be a problem. I got Brian Crabtree here. Brian is are you a firefighter too then, or just
Yeah, firefighter and paramedic.
Okay, he's a firefighter and paramedic, and he runs a group. What would you call it? Is it a foundation?
I call it an organization.
It's an organization, okay.
It's really an organization of one. I'm the person that heads it.
Yeah.
I'm the person that writes for it. I do accept other people's stories, other people's coming of age, if you will. People send me things all the time, and if I feel it fits the mission, then we'll go ahead and submit it on the website.
Right. Okay. All right. So now, how long have you worked as a firefighter and paramedic?
I started, in 2005 as a volunteer POC. That's paid on call. Just as they say, the pager wears. Get up in the middle of the night, go down to the station, that kind of thing.
Sure.
That was while holding a full-time job. I started my career as a first responder actually all the way back in 2000 with the state of Illinois at the prison system.
Okay.
So I was doing both of those jobs at the same time, and then fortunately in 2012 I was able to leave the prison system altogether, parole as I called it.
Fortunately, you didn't care for that.
No, it's a lot of weird stories with that as well.
I'm sure.
But 2012 I was able to leave the prison system and get a full-time job as a firefighter paramedic.
Okay, yeah, and that's just, and you've been, what'd you say, 2003?
2005 was when I first started, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you've had a much better time work-wise with what you do now versus
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now how did you get involved with, because the organization that Brian has is for PTSD for first responders, like you said. So what did you have like an experience with PTSD, or how did you come about to?
Well, it was really more cumulative. With the prison, with being a firefighter paramedic, with coming from a pretty strong military family as well.
Okay.
It was just a lot of stuff happening at just the right times, and as I like to say, I mean, we can get into the particulars later of some of the stuff that's gone on, but it was really funny. It was kind of a stereotype kind of story that kind of led to it. It was driving my son to school one day, and he says, you can't make this up. It sounds made up, but he says, Dad, he was 4 years old at the time. Dad, why are you mad all the time?
Yeah, right.
And I was like, well, expletive deleted. That's a really good question, and that really caused me to sit and think about a lot of things.
Did you feel like you were a guy that was mad all the time?
Right, yeah.
You did, yeah, you did. Yeah, you noticed that you were mad all the time?
Yeah, and so, why is that? And then got to talking with my wife a little bit, and that's when things started to open up. And then as things would have it, I go to a conference every year, play pipes and drums.
Okay.
And a lot of the guys that go there, we all have a Facebook group.
Sure.
Well, in the course of a week's time.
So you play pipes and drums? You mean like bagpipes?
Bagpipes,
okay,
yes.
All right,
Yeah, and in about a week's time, I think there were probably 3 of us that came to the realization, came out, we're like, you know what? Just gonna say it. I'm not okay right now, and I'm gonna go get some help.
Yeah, right, right, right. You know what? I mean, times have changed. Like when my dad was a young man, if someone was in therapy or something like that, it'd be like, oh, what the hell's wrong with the guy? He's a Looney Tune,
Mm-hmm.
this stuff. But I think that, and especially now when we do so much stuff where we're detached from actual conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a lot of people at the podcast that contact me from, Missouri or Texas or something like that. And they're like, oh, I'd like to get on there. I got a lot of opinions about this or that or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, listen, man, I'd like to have you on there. If you're in the Chicagoland area, then stop by I'll gladly have a conversation with you. But I want to have a conversation where I have a conversation with somebody. I
Mm-hmm.
just want to have a talk.
Right.
So I don't want to do one via Skype and I can't see the person.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really what I want to do. So I avoid that. If I really got somebody that, there was just no way and it was, an important thing to get them on, I would do that. But we live in a time now where some people, their complete social life is on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing everything by typing and talking and looking at the still pictures. And I mean, with the filters now, good God, no one even looks like the people that they are. And then the other thing that I find strange with that stuff is there's people that I've interacted with on social media, and then I've seen them out and they don't talk to me. And I'm
Right.
like, hey. And they're like, hey, I know who you are. And I'm like, you've talked to me online. Why wouldn't you talk to me in person?
Right. Right.
So we become, and I mean, I'm 48. So, like, I grew up with doing everything outside and having, like a regular life where I wasn't on the computer all the time. People that I'm around are like the same age and they
Mm-hmm.
act strange. They act
Oh yeah.
disconnected. So, um, I would just guess that having some therapy where you could just go for an hour, talk to somebody
Mm-hmm.
about your issues. That's the other thing too. Like some people maybe are around people that are not good at a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
They're really good at like holding their breath, waiting for their minute to talk, sort of thing. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like they're not in the conversation listening. Where therapy, you're paying the person to be a good
Oh right.
listener, sort of
Right.
situation. So, all right. So you had that conversation. You said, "Hey, we're not all right. We're gonna go." Did you go get therapy? Is that what you did?
You know,
Or-
I did. Initially, I contacted the department's EAP or Employee Assistance Program, and that's something that a lot of departments have set up that you can go get help for everything from mental health disorders all the way up to like say gambling addictions or
Okay.
financial help or
That's
substance
provided
abuse.
to first
Right.
responders.
Yeah, and you can call anonymous line. They'll get you hooked up with someone. Generally, you get 1 or 2 visits free, and then you're like, oh, they're like, okay, is this for you or what?
Right. Yeah, right. And then they hook you up, and then you just have a
Mm-hmm.
regular going there.
Right.
I'm all for it. I mean, somebody who with your situation, at one time you were a happy guy, and then you noticed that you weren't all of a sudden, like it changed.
Well, no, the main thing about it was that I didn't notice
Okay.
that it was such a such a long-term change that I mean, I guess you can equate it to you cut the grass every week, but you never see it growing.
Right.
You just know one day it's too long and you have to go cut it again.
Sure.
Well,
Sure.
this took my son telling me, "Hey, Dad, the grass is getting a little long. Why don't we do something about
Yeah,
that?"
that's good. That's good. I had a business partner and a buddy of mine who he always had a scowl on his face. He was always, and I think it was work stuff. I never let it get to me as far as when I was kind of just a happy-go-lucky guy. Like I don't care, what's going on, sort of a thing like that. Nothing's gonna bring me down that way. But he'd have people that would stop him in parking lots and be like, "Man, what's wrong?" They don't even know him.
Right.
And he's like, gonna look at it like, and he's like, "Why?" And then the one woman's like, "You just look like the most aggravated person in the world." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know." But so yeah, okay. So you were with a bunch of other guys, and you said you're not all right. Did other people say the same thing? Like, I don't feel all right either. I want to go talk to somebody.
A couple of them were exactly. It was just that. But then one person, he he's like, yeah. And oddly enough, we call him Angry. His nickname is
He's
Angry.
Angry, nice.
I won't. Well, the second part of his nickname is a first name, but I'm not gonna.
Sure.
I'm not gonna dime the guy out on a
No,
podcast.
right.
But he had actually said not only am I not all right, but I haven't been for quite some time. Here's my story, and I actually did X amount of time inpatient at a facility that's set up straight for union firefighters. It's the only people they see.
Now, okay, so do you feel that I'd heard that the number one cause for PTSD is actually a car wreck. So people get in a car wreck and then they're somehow not okay with things after that car wreck. Like it's a traumatic situation that they were through. But the first responders, because of like just explain it. I mean, I'm not like doubting it in
Right.
any way, but like it's what they see or what they have to deal with because of the job that they become traumatized.
I think a lot of it, yes, it can come down to what you see, but ultimately, in my experience, at least with me, it's not necessarily what you see, it's how you see it and how you're able to empathize with it.
Okay.
Like take someone who may be a 20-year-old kid, doesn't have any children, not married. He may be able to go on a call involving a child and it doesn't affect him, or at least
Sure.
seemingly doesn't affect him. Now you take a 35-year-old man who's got a 2-year-old son at home, and a call with a child might just mess his mind up.
Sure. Sure.
Just,
Sure.
I mean,
Right.
and that's the thing. We all talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, and most of the time I drop the D off the end of it. I don't like to talk about that. I call it post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, not disorder.
Right, because disorder has that connotation of it's with you, you're stuck,
Right.
and
Right.
and I think that's where a lot of the stigma comes into play. But I think that's where a lot of the post-traumatic stress comes from, is how people are able to empathize with it. A lot of the time we forget that our first responders, our soldiers, our police, our EMS, our firefighters, they're
Okay.
human too. They go home to families just like everybody
Sure.
else.
Sure. Sure. I guess I never really put in my mind like a soldier that's in Afghanistan as a first responder. I kind of thought of him as just a soldier, not a, like I mean, if you had somebody that was in the Coast Guard or the National Guard, I would think that'd be a first responder sort of thing. And that's still a soldier, I guess. But I just I never wrap my brain around who that is. Uh, like the buddy of mine, he was just aggravated because stupid employees and like stress of work and everything else, which can get you down too. And some people might need someone to talk to for that. So we're now with your organization. What you said you do some writing? Is there a blog or something like that? That you
Actually,
do?
yeah, that's really the blog is where it all started.
Okay.
It was just something that I came up with. I'm like, I know how long it took me to come to even realize that there was a problem.
Right.
So maybe if I write something down, then maybe someone can say, I see a lot of similarities here.
Right.
Or
Right.
or maybe it doesn't affect me at all. This guy, at leastwise it'll give someone about 5-10 minutes of time to kill when they read it.
Sure.
But if one person can see a similarity in it and not have to go years and years of festering, and then their 4-year-old son tells them, "Dad, you're being a little a-hole,"
Right. 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 Right.
then so be it. And then from the stories from the blog came a friend of mine. He said, "Hey, I think I might be up for one of those talks you were always talking about.
Yeah.
Or one of the walks, as I like to say. My buddy Angry, he he was actually the person who came up with the name for me without him even knowing about it.
Okay.
Because several times I'd be like in a mood or something, like, hey, you need to take a walk?
Right.
Let's go take a walk. So that's where the walking
Sure.
came
Sure.
in.
Sure. Okay.
But
So somebody reads the blog, and then I mean, do you spend some time talking with people too? Like,
I do have a contact on
okay,
there. It's an anonymous contact.
okay,
That if someone wants to drop a line and say, hey, let's talk about something, I am available for that.
awesome, awesome. What is now? Do different fire departments and stuff like that give anything? Is there a hotline? Like, I mean, there's a bunch of hotlines for soldiers to call if they're feeling suicidal or something like that. And is there a higher suicide rate amongst first responders than The
Yeah,
general public.
actually, compared to the general public, they say first responders have a 20% higher suicide and mental disorder rate.
Wow, wow. Now, I wonder why. I mean, I understand that there's stress in that job and stuff, but like, I don't know. I think some of that job, I think there's people that really, really, really enjoy that job too. Like, I mean, I worked with a guy that was a firefighter, and he spent Chicago firefighter, and he spent a lot of time trying to get into the Chicago firefighters, and he was thrilled when he did. We worked roofing and construction,
Uh-huh.
so he would do, his firefighter gig for whatever it was, the 24 hours on, and then when he was off, he was doing construction. For him, for the most part, it was just going to the firehouse. Like there wasn't that many calls, sort of
Right.
thing. So he had a lot of time to be doing roofing, and it was lucrative too, as far as he got his benefits through the fire department.
Oh
And
yeah.
worked his construction gig.
Yeah, you'd be hard pressed to find many firefighters that don't at least have some sort of side gig
Right,
to
right.
do as well. And really, from what I've found with research that I've done, is that right there may be the leading thing to do as far as protecting yourself from a mental disorder, post-traumatic stress,
Okay.
alcoholism, anything like that. It's called, oddly enough, resiliency.
Okay.
I mean, everyone's heard of resiliency, but maybe might not know what it's all about. Resiliency is just the ability to bounce back.
Okay.
As we've talked about, you see a lot of things. You see stuff that generally that most people in the world may see one or two extremely traumatic incidents in their
Sure.
lifetime. As a first responder, a lot of places that's a slow Tuesday.
Yeah, right. No, yeah, you're responding to those. You would think that, or I would think that, being a first responder in the South Side of Chicago would be a completely different gig than being a first responder in Wilmington. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like, you're just not seeing the same sort of carnage that you would be in that. And then, like, I had heard that firefighters in Chicago, sometimes they're worried about climbing up a ladder and then someone just taking a shot at them because they got a, colored coat
Right.
on or whatever. Like they're it's a dangerous gig as far as that goes. But statistically, the is it I don't want to I don't want to say anything negative about anything, but is it the dangers of the job or the things that you see, like what do you think it's more, the things you see on the job? Because statistically the job of being a firefighter or a policeman, it's not the most dangerous. They take a lot of safety precautions, so it's not like, if you're a fisherman or something, like there's a bunch of goofy jobs that are really,
Right.
really, really dangerous. Obviously soldier would be one that would be, if you're in a war, that's dangerous too. But I think they average out like all of the soldiers. So a guy stacking boxes,
Right.
he's not having a real dangerous job, and he goes into the equation. So what most of the people that talk to you and that read the blog, what's their how could they make the job better, that there wasn't, because it's a little worrisome that the people you depend on to show up first are dealing with this situation. So how can it be made better?
Well, really, I think practicing your own resiliency is the number one way. And ways we do that, set goals for yourself. You know, uh, I'm going to read 5 books this week. It doesn't even have to be job related.
Sure.
Preferably, it shouldn't be job related.
Right.
Have a little getaway. Work on what you're eating. Nutrition plays a role in exercise. The
Sure.
amount of sleep you get.
Right.
I mean, as a firefighter, up and down, get up in the middle of the night, back to bed, get
Yeah,
another
I
call.
tend to see that real, like, there's like a dramatic difference between I'll see firefighters and policemen. They're either the pinnacle of health looking guys, or they're big fat guys who don't look like it. It's like there's not. I mean, I'm sure there's guys in the middle, but I see guys that are, especially firefighters and policemen, that are like totally jacked. I mean, they look like they're obviously on steroids or something. They're like super jacked dudes. And then you'll see other cops that you're like, if somebody ran, you couldn't catch them. Like, you're a really big fat guy. So like, I don't know about firemen. Like, I don't see that many of them, but So yeah, I would think that for me, exercise is key for sure. I mean,
Hmm.
I get lots of miles in. I'm lifting weights all the time, that kind of stuff, because it does keep me sane
Hmm.
as far as things go. So, I mean, I almost think that like those sort of organizations would have the firefighter life is conducive to a real mess.
Hmm.
Because if you're working 24 hours on and 48 hours off, that leaves a lot of time to go drinking and do
Hmm.
all kinds of things that you shouldn't do to yourself as far as that goes. Because, I mean, most guys have a side gig, but, even trades guys, there's a lot of trades guys that, they're liquid lunching it and stuff like that. It's not a healthy lifestyle as far as it goes. And then fast food constantly, and
Hmm.
that's not real food. Uh, so, okay, so people reach out, they talk to you, they read the blog. Do people contribute to the blog?
There are some people who have contributed. The beautiful thing about it is it's it's a zero cost thing. It doesn't cost me any money other than the website subscription,
Okay.
which is minimal.
Yeah.
It really doesn't cost me anything to be able to put my story out there, to put little articles out there that I think up, and again, the main point of the website is it's there already. It's the help links,
Okay.
and they're designed to be, they're just set up to where you click on a link of okay, uh, substance abuse. Click on that. There's a list of places to go for substance abuse,
Yeah.
and they're all geared towards first responders. If you're having the big one, suicide prevention,
Yeah.
click on the suicide prevention, and you've got the phone number for the National Suicide Hotline. You've got the web page to where you can go and you can have a anonymous web chat with somebody. There's even stuff on there for spouse and family support.
Okay.
If you're a family member of a first responder who's going through a rough time and you want to know how to handle it, how to bring it to them,
Sure.
there are links there to help with that.
Yeah. I mean, if you're just married to the angry guy,
Right? Yeah.
that probably could be super helpful. I mean, that's like I've had a couple people on that are in wheelchairs as I am, and one of the guys like you should really interview my wife because they've been married 30 years. I'm like, you know what? That's a podcast. I should definitely talk to somebody who's had to deal with that. I would suspect that being married to a firefighter, being married to a cop is
Hmm.
probably a pretty hard gig all on its own. And then if your relationship is in rough shape, then you're more tendency towards suicide and then just life taking a crap on you
Oh
as far
yeah.
as
I
it goes.
mean, because my story, I look through it through rose-colored glasses. You know, I'm like, oh yeah, I've come out the other side.
Yeah.
My and that's, I mean, if someone can look at it like that, that's great.
Right.
But my wife would give you the real story.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, she would tell you that yeah, he came out the other side, but he still has his days, or well, this is what it was like when it was at its worst, and he didn't even acknowledge that.
Hmm. Wow. Now, so you started going to therapy and stuff like that. You said you went for a little bit, and then
Hmm.
they tell you if it's for you. And it was for you then, right? So you stayed in
You know, the
therapy.
funny thing about that was initially, no, it was not.
Okay.
um, and that's the reason why I came up with the links on my website for different resources, because I found out there is no one size fits all therapy.
Sure.
There's no one size fits all for substance abuse or for family support. I contacted the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program,
Okay.
and I told this woman till I was blue in the face. I said, I know they're out there. I need someone who knows what a first responder's life is like.
Yeah. Right.
And this is what I'm going through. This is the dire straits that I'm in. First off, it took him 2 weeks to respond back and say, I found you somebody.
Good golly, that's not good.
And then I go in for the appointment. I'm like, okay, great. Let's get this taken care of. Within 5 minutes of hearing my story, this doctor of psychology tells me, you know, it sounds to me like you chose the wrong profession.
Like, don't you need a
Yeah.
good job?
She says I'm in the wrong line of work. I took one look at it and I said, well, you know what? I think I also chose the wrong doctor.
Yeah. Right. Right.
I got up and walked out, and it put me, I would say, probably a good month behind schedule for getting help.
Sure.
That really just checked me out right from the get-go.
Right, right, right.
Then found someone else that I read some of the stuff you wrote. I've got a really good one. Why don't you go see her?
Okay.
So I go see her, and it's seemingly going all right for a couple months.
Sure.
And then I don't know whether I just Jerry Seinfelded the whole thing and just manufactured some strange little thing to get me out of seeing her, but it just seemed like I was her weekly soap opera.
Okay.
To where rather than listening to me, she wants to know, oh, what happened next? Where's the story going?
Sure,
So I'm like,
sure.
okay, you know what, well, you're not for me.
Right, right, right. Yeah, she wasn't doing any therapy. She was
Right,
just listening to
yeah.
what was going on. That's funny. That's weird. I mean, I never thought about that job either. That's a weird gig because you gotta be trusted to
Mm-hmm.
to to take that stuff and not go anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Not judge somebody for that stuff. And I mean, the psychologist thing. Like I was trying to get a couple psychologists on the podcast, and specifically a sex therapist, because I would figure they've got to be dealing with some crazy ass shit. Just seeing what's on porn nowadays, there's got to be some crazy ass shit. When you realize you have a problem big enough to like, I got to get professional help.
Right.
This has got to be something that's weird. So this lady that you're talking about that was there, she specialized in like first responders and firemen and stuff like that?
I don't believe this lady actually specialized in it. It was just a firefighter that I know and trust.
Okay.
He had great results with her.
Okay. All right.
And that's the first one was just EAP, they put you with someone. Well, this was someone that I know someone who had great success with her.
Okay.
And not having the success with her, again, set me back about another month. But it made me realize that what's good for you isn't good for me. Maybe
Sure.
not.
No. Right. 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 That'd be normal. And get yourself a drink, man. You sure?
Yeah, actually water would be
You know what?
great.
We'll just pause it real quick here, and then I'm gonna send you right out this door. At the end of the ramp, there is a. If you go out the second door, there's a case of water right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's these darn weather changes.
Yeah. No worries, man. I can edit anything out.
All right, we'll see how this works.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, doing the. I think I think this is episode 46 for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I did a couple where I didn't have. Usually I got like a glass of tea or something too, because it soothes your throat. You can talk and not have any trouble. But I always got something to drink, a little bit something.
Yeah, say these weather changes make me really susceptible.
Yeah.
I guess it's the deep voice or what, but
When you came in, or before like last week, I'm like, oh man, all this coronavirus, I'm gonna have to start not shaking hands. I'm gonna have to start, like fist bumping or something, because it's crazy the way that the stuff they're talking about with that stuff. And it's like, they were saying that it's the contagious level is higher than the flu, and then the flu's mortality rate is like 0.1% of people that get the flu. So 1 in 1,000 dies, and they're saying like 2 to 3% So it's like 25 or 30 times
Right.
the
Yeah.
mortality rate with this. And then someone at the CDC said that it's very possible that this country could have an outbreak that 40% of the population gets
Uh-huh.
the thing. So if you take 40% of 350 million people and then you say 3% of those people die, that's millions of people.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, whoa, that's a whole crazy thing. Like, we gotta start, like, I don't know, acting different. Like maybe shaking hands is not the
Yeah.
best.
But then they're also talking. It's the weirdest thing. They say for some reason it's sparing kids.
Yeah, I had heard that, but then today they just had a thing on there where 3 kids got it.
Well, yeah, they'll say kids will get it,
Yeah.
but their symptoms will generally be extremely mild,
Right,
almost missed.
Right.
It's like
Then you're
it's
still
like a
you're still
reverse
carrying
biblical
it.
plague.
Right. You're still carrying it.
Yes,
Everybody.
yeah.
So you're spreading it out
Uh-huh.
to everybody else. All right. So I'll edit and back into here now. So okay. So I had to get Brian a little something to drink, but all right. So this lady, so she didn't work out either then, right? So like you moved on from her then.
Right. And against my better judgment, I had a friend who called me up and they're like, hey, again, it was I've read your stories and this was someone that he was a Chicago firefighter, retired lieutenant. Him and I met oddly enough with the bagpipes.
Yeah.
We used to do the honor flights out of Chicago.
Yeah. That's where you take the veterans on the
Right.
flight.
And we'd play him back through the terminal, and this man, I was like, okay, well, I should probably listen to what he's saying. He was one of the first people there on the field at the last O'Hare plane crash.
Sure.
And he was like, this woman, she's the goods. She's like, she is fire family.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, kind of heard those stories before, but I'll go check it out. And let me tell you, it is a breath of fresh air when the doctor drops the F-bomb before you do.
There you go. Yeah, right. You want something like that. I mean, I'll tell you what. I had a Marine, a former Marine, on the podcast who was injured 3 times in Fallujah. He was a Marine sniper, and he ran the most long distance triathlons in a year. He had like 26 long distance triathlons that he did in 1 year. It was something like 24 and then 2 marathons that he fit in there too. Some crazy thing. And he was supposed to do it in a year. He did it all in 8 months.
Right.
So it was like this crazy thing. But he talked about his experience in Fallujah and stuff like that. And he's like, I know I have PTSD, but he goes, this guy's name is Mike, and he didn't seem bothered by anything, like on the outside. I don't know if he was different on the inside or whatever, but he was really rock solid. I mean, I think we had talked before the podcast, and he was talking about like how other guys that deal with PTSD, like he just doesn't see it that way. Like he's not that affected.
It goes back to resilience.
Right.
It goes back.
Some people are just rocks like that, and they don't, and other people are, it's a little bit tougher for them.
Yeah,
it's not a wimpy thing at all. I'm just saying that.
It all boils down to what your story is. What you can, like we said at the beginning, what can you empathize with?
Right.
How do you empathize with it? Are you somebody who can? My partner at work, for instance, I'll tell him, hey, remember that guy we had last week? It was over on such and such address, and I'll give a specific address, and it'll be his name was, and then he'll be like, dude, I can't even remember what I had for lunch today.
It's just a job. He's just doing it. It doesn't even. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's probably the way you gotta. Obviously, you gotta give a shit in the moment.
Right.
Sure,
Oh yeah.
You gotta do your job well, but then you gotta just put it behind you and not. I got injured in 2003. I was in Piatone and scaffolding collapsed and I broke my neck, and it was pretty bad.
I would imagine.
My chest down, and I ran into people who reacted differently too. So I had one guy tell me, "Well, so what? Now you just gotta sit the rest of your life. Like you just made it into nothing." I'm like, "Well, I don't know if it's that nothing." And then other people, like the minute they saw me, you could see on their face they were like, "Oh man." And I'm like, yeah. So like, everything affects people differently, and it may be for like the reasons you were saying. Maybe someone's affected by seeing a kid that's mangled because they have a 4-year-old kid
Mm-hmm.
and they put themselves in that situation. Or someone that doesn't have kids and just doesn't, you have kids, I have kids. It's hard for me to. My sons are twins. They're both 18 years old. It's impossible for me to explain to them how I feel about them and how I feel about
Mm-hmm.
what they're doing
Right.
until they have kids. There's going to be a light that comes on when they've got a
Mm-hmm.
4-year-old and they're going to go, now I get it. The
Right.
guy
Yeah.
really, like, I genuinely care more about their situation than I do my
Mm-hmm.
own. So, for them, there'll be a wrestling tournament that we have to drive 2.5 hours to get to, and I have to shower and all the other stuff that morning. I have to literally get up at 3 a.m.,
Mm-hmm.
get all my stuff together, do everything I got to do, get my ass in the car, and then drive them to the thing
Right.
so I can wait for 2 hours for them to wrestle. And like they're kids, they don't realize that I had to do all that crap. But there's no chance that I would do that for somebody else besides my kids. Like I wouldn't
Right.
even do it for me. I'm like, I gotta find another hobby. This is a
Mm-hmm.
fucking stupid thing.
Yeah, just wait till they realize what when they have kids,
Right.
they go to the baseball tournament or the wrestling tournament. They're like, God, I gotta sit here for 2, and then that, like you said, that light's
The
gonna
light
go
will
off.
come
They're
on,
gonna
right,
be like,
right,
oh,
right.
that's what it
Right.
was.
That's what it was for him. And then I don't think that they're gonna mind when it's their own kids. Uh, I make them coach now, and they have never been the guys that they would go home from school and be like, "Do we got practice today?" And I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "Oh, thank God!" Like they love to go to practice.
Mm-hmm.
When they were in the youth level, you only practice 2 or 3 days a week. High school, you practice every day, so
Mm-hmm.
it's just you're going to practice. But they would come home from school sometimes and there was no practice, and they were bummed that they didn't get to go to practice. Now, when there's a tournament on a Sunday, I'm like, hey, we got to go out to this tournament. And they're like, oh man, like that sucks. Like I got to waste my entire day with these kids. And I'm like, hey, I get it. Uh, but I'm sure that they'll have, I hope at least they'll have a different state of mind when they have their own kids because you realize what you're doing it all for. You're doing it all for these people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you saw somebody that was in a bad car wreck or in a bad situation, I had a firefighter get mad at me. I just built a house, and we moved in there, and there was no CO2 detectors,
Mm-hmm.
and my HVAC guy put a flue on there that was not quite enough pitch on there, and we had a CO2 leak in the house, and it was bad. Like I mean,
Uh-huh.
my dad was living in the basement. He was hospitalized, and he was a smoker. And they said if you weren't a smoker, we think you would have died just because you had really breathed. He was right down by the
Right.
furnace, and I got alerted to it because my like 6-year-old daughter walked into the room and was like, I don't feel it. She did a header.
Hmm.
And I was like, whoa. And then
Yeah, that's
called 911. They all came out there. They're like, and the guy's like, how could you let this? I'm like, I didn't know. I just moved in here a year ago, but he was
right.
pissed. And I figure he had kids and he was just mad that the kids
Mm-hmm.
were in the house and this. And I'm like, listen, man, and I got CO2 detectors after that. But I think it was like right when that code changed where they're
Mm-hmm.
mandatory.
Oh yeah,
now. You have to
mandatory.
have them. So like everybody's gonna react differently. I'm sure that's a job that I'm a general contractor and a real estate broker, and I was building this really big, nice like outdoor living space for a guy, and this guy's name was Dennis, and he was coming home, he was kind of talking construction-y and stuff, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I make it a point when I'm selling a job to somebody not to ask them what they do, because I think people that are doctors or attorneys or someone that they think makes a lot of money feel uncomfortable about that situation because they feel like if you find out they make a lot of money, then you're going to charge them more.
Right.
Sort of
Uh-huh.
situation. But after I'm there for 4 or 5 days, I bring it up. So I'm like, hey, Dennis, what do you do? He goes, I'm a union carpenter. And I'm like, why am I here? Why am I
Right.
at your house? And he goes, well, I spent my entire career in the carpenters union, but I really just do rubber base in hospitals and
Mm-hmm.
places like that. So he goes, I really just put a rubber base on. I couldn't build anything. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so weird that you'd have a job like that versus a job where you're a first responder, where you've got a million
Mm-hmm.
stories. There's a million things that go on that are like,
Oh
holy
yeah.
shit, mind blowing. This guy's been putting glue on rubber base for
Yeah.
20 years.
And then we go to what we talked about earlier with you can even boil it down to like city versus rural or
Sure.
suburban. Um, in the city, you have single role paramedics. I'm speaking for Chicago. I
Okay.
assume it goes for other cities as well.
Single role. What does that mean?
That just means if you're a single role paramedic, you are just a paramedic.
Okay.
You work the ambulance. That's your job.
Got it.
Then you have the firefighters. They work a fire apparatus, whether it be a truck, a squad,
Okay.
an engine, what have you. And on those rigs, you have an officer, you have an engineer that drives, and then you may have one person who he's like, I'm the nozzle guy. I hold the nozzle every fire.
Especially,
Another guy,
yeah, right.
another guy every fire. I back up. I move the hose around. I back up the nozzle guy. And then you got another guy. Well, what do you do? Oh, I spent 30 years opening up a hydrant.
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, I've never worked in the city. I assume those guys do a lot more as well.
Sure. And I mean, I
But
would
that's
assume,
what we hear is the suburban guys, because the suburban and rural, you may be a firefighter paramedic, and what you do is based off what call comes in.
Sure.
You get an EMS call. Okay, well, I'm a paramedic now. You get a fire comes in. Well, I'm working on the truck today, so I guess I'm a truck guy. You know, so I mean, what you
Right,
do
right.
changes day to day.
I would suspect that with people living on top of each other in the city, that you would get more calls too, where you're, especially if you're working maybe south side where you're in the projects. I mean, there's times where you see those burned out all the time, sort of
Oh, yeah.
situation. So you're being far more calls going on, and then again, south side of Chicago, you probably got some situations where it's just a hairy situation because you're being called into a spot that you don't want to go to in the
Right.
first place.
But then you also have the airport guys. You know, the guys who are assigned to O'Hare or Midway.
Yeah, then nothing
I'm
happens.
I'm pretty sure they don't fight too much fire at those stations.
Right.
But they do fill a vital role.
Sure, and I mean, I know guys that are like electricians in roles like that, and they pretty much change light bulbs. There's guys that are carpenters that hang photos and stuff like that because that's what they do in this big business situation. And I think some people gravitate to those jobs. I personally liked the general contracting we did because it was a different thing all the time. So, you know, for 2 weeks we could be roofing, and then for 2 weeks we're framing a house, and then for 2 weeks we're, you know, doing something like it was just different all the time. And we did everything. We did kitchen remodels, we did room additions, we did homes, we did decks and all that kind of stuff. So it was fun to change it up all the time to do different things. So I mean, you know, I think I would gravitate more towards the suburban fireman guy who's doing a little bit of everything, sort of a deal.
It does fill the time. I mean, in today's day and age, we're not fighting as much fire as we did
hope
like,
not,
you
right?
know,
We're getting
20,
safer.
20, 30, 40 years ago.
Right.
So I mean, the way we say it, especially in the suburbs, you know, everyone, you know, the kids wave at the fire engine and the ambulance goes by, and you know, they're kind of little shy towards the ambulances.
Sure, sure, yeah.
The firefighters, the fire rigs, that's what gets you the looks, but
Sure.
the EMS is what makes your money.
Right now, the firefighter that I worked with him for, gosh, a year and a half, and I remember it being like, it was a considerable amount of time, like maybe like 4 or 5 months in, and he had never gotten a call. Like not to like a real fire, like
Right.
something was burning down sort of situation. He got calls for like, you know, this lady got bit by a dog and she was on blood thinners, so like they had to go get her because she couldn't stop bleeding. And, like all this, he goes, nothing has happened that's been like huge, like, you know, big thing to go on. Like I'm expecting a warehouse fire or something like that. And he said, it's just not happening. And I go, I'm sure it'll happen.
Yeah.
So, you know,
No, don't worry, it'll happen.
Right.
Don't go begging first.
Yeah.
You know?
Now, do you get young guys that are gung ho? Like,
Oh yeah. You know, I mean, everyone gets in there. The way I say is, every firefighter wants to put out a huge fire. They want to pull someone from a burning building.
Sure, right. That's where you got the job.
Right, or they want to save someone, cut someone out of a car.
Sure.
The police want to stop a hostage situation.
Yeah.
You know, the correctional officer, he wants to be the one who stopped the riot. But what you realize very quickly is those hero moments are also somebody's worst day.
Yeah, right. Somebody could have a really bad time. Could go south. Could go sideways fast.
And for every back to the reason we're here, those hero moments that everyone wants to have that thinks they're going to get a medal pinned to their chest. I can tell you for every single moment that you feel, okay, I did my job, everything went great, everything went according to plan, there is probably about 10 or 12 that just didn't go the way you wanted it to.
Right. Now, I mean, yeah, so have you had to deal with anything that was like, you didn't know what to tell the guy? Like, I don't even know this is bad. Like, I don't know. Like, is anybody had to, like, been like the one who said you got to choose a different job? Has anyone gotten out of that job because of something that happened to them, like during the job?
It happens all too often. And I think a lot of the time, especially with, like, say, the bigger stories, this may be the end of my my website here for saying it, but let's go big here. Let's talk the Parkland shooting.
Okay, yeah, right. Florida, sure.
There was that one police officer. Everyone lambasting him in the news because he stayed outside. He didn't go in. He didn't protect those kids.
Yeah, but if I know something about guns, and he shouldn't have gone in there because he was not armed the way.
Right. I mean, we can talk company policy and the way they're supposed to do things and what was written on paper all you want, but the way I tell people, and it's an analogy that works across the board. You never know how you're going to act when bullets start flying.
Sure.
Until bullets start flying.
Right.
Should he have ever been a police officer? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. But at least now he knows.
Yeah. Right.
It's so unfortunate too that this man is going to spend how long seeking professional help from a biased community.
Right.
Because there was something he found out in the worst way imaginable.
Right.
That there's no other way he could have found it out.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. You weren't up to the test that day for sure. And I mean, when you think about, those are rare situations on the whole as far as the country goes.
Absolutely.
But when they do happen, I mean, like Sandy Hook and stuff like that, there was like 21 little kids that got killed in that situation. I don't know if being a guy that had kids, if I showed up to that, I don't know if I could.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do know from that incident there are actually a very minuscule amount of people who were on that call that are still in emergency response today.
Yeah, I think it would sour me out. I think I'd be like, man, I'm going to go into sales, or I don't know what I'm going to do, but I got to get out of this. Because if you're somebody who could see that over and over again, then there might be something wrong with you. You might need therapy a different way.
And that's something that's the last parts of resilience that I keep going back to. Resilience isn't about just trying to, why don't you just blow off some steam, go to the gym, run, like the Marine you were talking about. Let's go run 500 miles in 8 months. Right. Part of resilience isn't just about building yourself up. It's about finding ways to get built up. You can reach out to somebody, or you can just go talk to someone, find therapy.
Right. Yeah,
and that's something else that's got to change in the world of first response too. It's not just about someone wanting to go get help. It's about making it safe for that person to get help.
Right. Now, yeah, when Mike was on, he was talking about, like, guys that had died in his arms and guys that got parts of their heads blown off and all sort of stuff, and he was right there with them. And this guy's a real deal, man. I tell you, he really, dealt with it in a way that I don't know if he even sort of even made it like it was nothing. He would say stuff like, guys that are still in country doing things like that, they're doing cool guy, what did he call it? He said it was cool guy stuff.
Yeah, cool guy stuff. Yeah,
cool guy stuff, whatever like that. Like he just, just it is what it is, sort of thing. I don't even know if he sort of gets addicted to the adrenaline of that situation, because he was going back with private contractors and stuff, outside of the Marines. But yeah, there's definitely certain things I couldn't, deal with. I dealt with quite a bit with being paralyzed. When I broke my neck, I was in a coma for 21 days. I was 195. I could bench press 300 pounds when I broke my neck. When I woke up out of the 21 day coma, I was 154, and I couldn't pick my arms up off the bed. I just had atrophy,
Right,
all
yeah.
gone. So like it was rough. It was like starting from zero again to get. And I had just got done like hitting the weights with a guy that was really hitting the weights. And then my first workout when I got to the hospital was they picked up my arm, put it in a sling, and then they hooked it to the ceiling. There was like a grid, and all I did
Uh-huh.
was not free of any weight or any resistance. I just moved my arm. That was my workout. I'm like, what the hell am I gonna do with this? I'm never gonna get anywhere. um, but that being said, that I'd been through that, I couldn't deal with. I don't know if I could deal with it with my own. If one of my kids had to go through the same thing, I'd have a harder time with seeing that than I would
Well,
myself.
that's just it too. We always have such a harder time seeing it in our kids and children in general than ourselves.
No, I couldn't. I mean, right? It'd be difficult for sure, no doubt.
I mean, if something like that happened to me, I've injured myself not to your extent, obviously. I mean, I'm not going to try to belittle it or anything,
No.
but it's a whole different ball game when you see it with somebody else, and it's even worse when you can empathize with it or when you have an emotional attachment.
Sure. No, for sure. I mean, so yeah, right. So that's something too that people get out now. If someone was in a first responder situation and then they left that industry, that doesn't mean that the PTSD has left them either. So they could still actually
Right.
deal with the, call the thing, talk to you, all that.
That's why they call it post-traumatic.
Right.
I mean, and I think a lot of people get that confused too. And just because you're feeling something now doesn't mean you can't go get there. If it's I mean, if you go on a call, and we'll go back to our old example with a child call, and you feel very strongly about it, it's not like you can't go get help because it's not post-traumatic. Because it's like, oh, I felt that immediately. Well, that's a problem
Talk to
too.
somebody, yeah, for sure.
Why not nip it off? Nip it off before it becomes something bigger.
Right.
I mean, it's okay to feel something, and that's what we.
That's got to be a big issue too for a lot of guys, right? They don't tell anyone that anything feels like anything.
Yeah, actually, there was a huge study done of all people, University of Phoenix. You see them online. Like, oh, I don't know about a university that does like more advertising than Mike Bloomberg, but
right.
a little topical here for something that someone might see a few years from now.
Yeah, I'm glad he dropped out of that thing. That was such a nightmare.
But University of Phoenix in 2017 did a major study on mental health, wellness, and illness in first responders, and what they found out was about 51% of people say that they've gone and sought treatment.
Yeah, right.
And out of the let's see, I got some numbers here in front of me. Pardon me for looking down.
No, go for it.
We've got half of the people said they had mental health training at work. About half, and of those half, 74% said it was readily available. But then the ones that say that it's readily available, again, about 70% say it goes unused.
Oh wow, right. And I mean, how many said it was helpful?
Right.
Like that sort of thing, or even it was, like you had experiences with certain therapists that you're like, no, that's not doing anything at all. If I stayed in this situation, I'm not getting anywhere with this.
Right.
Right.
And because in my experience, things have to come in their own time. Pardon me for the voice. These weather changes.
Yeah, no, you're all right. And I'll say that I'm a dick. I mean, I have a high standard for everything that goes on. When it comes to construction stuff, there's so many shoddy contractors.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to even the real estate stuff,
Listen to me. Oh yeah.
there's so many bad ones, man. So like when I see anyone doing a job, most people to me don't like, live up to the standard that I put myself to. And I mean, like I've told my sons, I go, listen, the amount of money you make is not the gauge of success. If you're making $200,000 a year, that to me doesn't mean you're successful. What successful to me means is, success. Being a successful person is at your job or the thing that you do.
Mm-hmm.
When the shit hits the fan and someone says, "We gotta go get Brian," you're successful then because you're the guy that they're gonna go get when everything's a fucking
Mm-hmm.
mess. So that to me is successful. I don't care if it's the toilets are clogged and you're the janitor. You're the only guy that can
Right,
fix
you're
it.
the only guy gonna
Guess
fix
what?
it.
You're the king of the midgets then. You're the guy that can fix it. So that matters to me. But there's always that guy. There'll be a group of 10
Oh
people
yeah,
and there's that
yeah.
one guy that can fix it. So most people to me do a horseshit job of whatever they do. And I don't know anything about, firemen or policemen or anything like that. But I would suspect that it's the same there, that there's bad firemen, there's bad policemen, the guys that aren't quite good at their job. And then definitely the job that you're talking about with the therapist, I can't even imagine that some people just have that job to have that
Oh
job.
yeah, I mean that moment in and of itself was just out of just about everything I've experienced in life, that right there was my "you sunk my battleship" kind of moment.
Sure, sure, sure.
And then it's like, okay, well, what if it isn't? And that's why I was so glad. Eventually,
Yeah.
I was so glad when I got another doctor, was able to go talk to her, and this girl, oh my God, she not only was she like, well, let's say she was more of a sailor with her language.
Yeah, right.
And
It makes you more comfortable.
oh right, oh yeah,
Right.
very very comfortable. And she would not let me get away with an inch of property. It's like anytime someone, she's like, okay, that's a great fucking story, Brian, but kind of skirting the issue there, you know?
Right,
So,
right.
really, that's ultimately that's what was needed, because even saying, okay, I need help and I'm gonna go get help. Okay, you're there. Now what?
Yeah, right.
You're
Right.
still stuck with the same stigma in your head,
Sure, sure, sure.
whether you know it or not.
Yeah, right. Now, did anybody in the industry give you grief for going to get help?
You know, I was actually very fortunate with that. I don't know. I've heard a lot of people, oh yeah, you know, I went and got help and then was immediately blackballed, or you know, everyone looked at me different. I don't know whether it was just I had blinders on and just didn't really give a shit anyway, but I mean, I felt that it was something for me.
Right.
So I mean, whether
See, I'm
they
not
did or
much
they
for
didn't, I just really didn't pay much attention to it.
I'm not much for the woke culture like this. The thing where my problem is I speak in a way sometimes that like I say things like batshit crazy. I say I don't really. I guess I veer away from like saying something's retarded or anything like that
Hmm.
because that does have that bad stigma. Um, but I definitely get wrapped to the line, and I'm not meaning any harm by it, right? So
Hmm.
I had a guy on that's a Black History teacher, and I said like, it's amazing that at one time people would call people of color or of African descent that they were Negroes.
Hmm.
Now I'm not going to say the N
Right.
word
Yeah. Yeah.
itself because that's just a terrible derogatory thing. But we had a conversation and he told you like I wasn't saying it in a negative sort of a way,
Hmm.
but nowadays you have that fear that somebody out there is going to have this situation and try and use it to be something that it's not. I saw on social media some goofy ass post about not calling things handicap, calling them accessible because people that are handicapped are going to be offended by. And I got on there and I'm like, this is the dumbest. You don't understand. I got all kinds of problems in the world. Dealing with someone calling me handicapped is not one of them.
That's one of those things you should have trolled with them for a while.
Oh, I did. I
Oh,
was
yeah.
all over it. And then she's like, I can't believe how insensitive you are. I'm 17 years in a fucking wheelchair.
And then take a picture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're some moron. And then I get other guys, like I got a guy that was just on the podcast yesterday, and he had a friend, and we were arguing politics, and he was a Trump supporter, this guy, and I was laying into him, and he was, said something about, what we were talking about was when Trump mocked the handicap reporter, and he did the whole, you got to see this guy, and the guy tried to convince me that that's not what happened. And I'm like, I saw it with my own eyes. And I mean, verbatim, the guy said, like, listen, I'm not that sensitive. So, it's a shitty human thing to do. But what I am sensitive to is you trying to bullshit me out of the truth. The truth was, he mocked the handicapped reporter, and you don't want him to have done that. But I have it on video here, and he did it.
Right.
So here it is. And I mean, I don't care if you're a Trump supporter or not a Trump supporter, or if you're, that doesn't mean shit to me. But this guy was all mad, and then he actually went into using, he goes, I'm a guy in a wheelchair. You think that I would, and I'm like, all right, before you try and leverage your disability again, realize that I'm also a guy in a wheelchair. Like, that's not, that doesn't make it anything. That's just, just dumb. But, so, the woke culture of, like, I had somebody who, what did she have? Oh, her child had some sort of a mental handicap or something like, it wasn't slow or something. It was like schizophrenia or something like that. And I said something about batshit crazy, and she got all mad. And I'm like, she goes, that's not really a good term. You shouldn't say crazy. And I go, I can't say crazy anymore?
Right.
Okay, so, I mean, I got to say insane. What am I going to do to make it okay? I'm not saying that your kid's batshit crazy. I'm saying that this person that was at Wendy's was batshit crazy because he came in with no pants on. Like, it seemed kind of crazy.
Yeah, some call it what it is. That's what I say.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't understand this culture of that. So that's the one extreme, and then I don't understand the culture that would be like a guy like you, who's you're working a man's job. You obviously decided at some point that you needed to talk to somebody, and somebody having a problem with that or trying to belittle you because of it. Now, that's an asshole. Like, so,
Right,
that's
call it what it is.
The woke culture goes too far, though. Like, call out an asshole for doing that, but then don't call out every single person that says anything about someone that's mentally unstable.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
And that was one of the big things with my wife. God love her. She stuck with me through all of it, all the mistakes I made and all that. But
Right.
Sometimes her and I will still have little spats here and there. We're married, so we're gonna have those spats.
Yeah.
But sometimes she'll look at me and like I'll get on some tantrum, like somebody cut me off in traffic and I start going crazy, and
A little road rage.
Right, not enough to, just typical guy stuff, not enough to tell them about it, but I'm gonna go off like, just on some little tantrum in the car.
A little bit.
Right, and she looks at me and she's like, giving me that look. She's like, kind of that, you're doing it again. And I'm like, no, this is one of those things. Not everything is a result of
Right.
of what I've gone through. Sometimes an asshole just needs to be called an asshole.
Sure. Now, I mean, do you mind, like, some of the things that you feel that you've gone through, like, what would be examples of that? So someone was out there and they felt like because, I mean, like, you didn't recognize it. Your 4-year-old kid did. So what were things that you realized through therapy that bothered you? Like, how did you come to those? Like, did you have, like, the breakthrough moments in therapy where you're like, wow, I really left there feeling like I feel better now that I talked about that one incident that was the thing that really was bothering me.
It was the one thing that this lady did for me that no one else had even tried. She's like, I do all kinds of weird little therapies and all that, and she mentioned one to me. It's called EMDR.
Okay.
It's eye movement desensitization. Hell, I can't even really
Okay.
remember. All I know is if you're ever in a bad spot and someone says let's try MDR, chances are it's going to work. It's amazing.
All right.
Magic bullet for me.
Nice.
And that's coming from the guy who says there's no one size fits
Sure,
all.
sure. Now, most things I'm a super skeptic on. Like, and I mean, I don't. I have a friend of mine who his wife says she's a medium, and she tried to like do a reading on me one night. And I was like, just skip me because I don't. That's not like what I want. But like, I want to hear about. Like, I want to have a
Right,
conversation with
yeah.
her about the thing. And I'm not. I personally don't believe in stuff like that. But that doesn't. I'm an idiot. That doesn't mean it doesn't fucking exist. So what was the thing? It was.
Well, this whole thing was, and this is why it sounded so hokey. She'd give me two little paddles, one in my right hand, one in my left hand, and she'd say, "Okay, the biggest incident, the one that you think is the problem. Let's talk about it." She like, "What happened?" So we'd start at the beginning, talk about it for a little bit, or
Okay.
more. I would narrate the situation in my head.
Yeah.
And she'd be like, okay. And as soon as she's like, is that a good spot? I'd be like, yeah. Then she'd just keep quiet, turn on this machine, and I'd feel the vibration. Left hand, right hand, left hand, right hand.
It's just a vibe. So the paddle vibrated.
Right, and that was all it was. And then we'd go on with go on talking more, and then same thing, left, right, and then talk more, left, and that would go all the way through the incident. And then when it was first happening, I'd get to a certain spot and I'd break down, and then we'd go further, and then she'd be like, okay, I think that's enough for today. Let's move on with some other stuff. And then one day, she's like, "We're doing EMDR again today." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do that. Let's keep going with it. Let's see where it takes us."
Yeah.
And then we get to the point where I'm normally ready to break down. It was a little an EMS call, we'll say, that was really the straw for me.
Okay.
Or I felt. And we get to the point where I normally start to lose it, and she's like, okay, so she hits me the right, left, and I go to describe things a little further, and all of a sudden I just kind of, my shoulders just slumped. And she gets this smile on her face. And she's like, go on. Like, she knows I'm about ready to say something, and I'm like, it was the damnedest thing that it's a story I've told 100 times, never been able to get through it. And it just all of a sudden hit me that while I'm in the moment, like reliving this, it just hit me that the ER staff is not doing a damn thing more for this person than what I already did.
Right.
And she's like, there it is. And I'm like, why in the hell did I have to go through all that? Why couldn't you have just told me that?
So yeah, so that was a weight off your shoulders sort of
Right.
situation.
But apparently the whole gist of the EMDR therapy was it's not just let's talk about it, then feel these annoying paddles for a minute and a half.
Yeah, right.
But the whole thing is apparently it's I don't know if this is the truth and how it works, but apparently it's reprocessing memories. It's able to get your left brain activated, your right brain, left brain, right brain, left
And I
brain.
wonder how they come up with shit like that, because that does not sound like something that
Right.
would be a thing.
It's like, hey, it's like it's almost like a stoner came up with it. Hey, I think this looks like it might actually work. Let's see how this does.
Right.
I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't have experienced it, but it was amazing.
Okay, so speaking of stoner stuff, now what about so I've heard that guys with CTE, so traumatic brain stuff that goes on, that marijuana is supposed to be a helpful situation with that, and then guys with PTSD, psilocybin, magic mushrooms is supposed to be. They're supposed to be doing studies right now that is huge. They had a guy on Rogan that he's been doing, like, it's not, he's not just like eating a bunch of mushrooms and going like tripping balls.
Right. Yeah.
He's in a therapeutic situation
Right.
where
Yeah.
they're talking almost similar, like where he's
Mm-hmm.
talking about stuff, but he's on psilocybin when he's doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and they're coming out of it with a different thing. Now, I have my own experience with PTSD. I came out of a ethics test for real estate, and the curb cutout was jacked up,
Mm-hmm.
flipped the chair, and I have never been knocked out in my life, but this time I was knocked out.
Yeah.
Out, like gone. I remember the chair flipping. I remember someone standing over me. They had to put 10 staples in the back of my head to put my head back together. And I woke up hours later in the hospital. They had already done CT scans. They'd already done all this stuff on me. And I was like, they already did all that? They're like, yep. And I mean, I was undressed. Everything was totally, I'm like, what the fuck? And the concussion was so bad that I lost weeks. Like, people had explained to me where I was. And then when they would start to explain it, I'd start to get them back. Like, they were in there somewhere. They was jumbled up. And I was paranoid. I was scared. I guess I was repeating myself. Kind of like the concussion was rough, real good concussion. And for years, even when I see a hairy curb cutout today, I still get a little bit like, I don't know about that, man. I'll go a block to get one that I don't think is. And I mean, I would have hit that thing like nothing before that. Like, gone right over it. Who cares? Whatever. So I mean, that's a little like post-traumatic, trauma syndrome for me or whatever.
Well, you can. I mean, I assume some people would look at it that way. Me, I say that's human survival right there.
Yeah, just
that's how we.
The dumb thing
Yeah, that's called evolution. We're able to learn from our mistakes.
I see it as PTSD a little bit because some of them aren't dangerous. Like, I'm afraid to go down it, but then after I go down, I'm like, there's nothing. This is dumb. Like, why am I like? I mean, I'll see ones where I'm just coming out of. In the wintertime, I'll go to the mall and do 8 miles in the chair just to get some exercise when it's like shitty out. And there's almost but I'm still crazy cautious over nothing. Like, I'm like, all right, dude, just chill. But I feel the anxiety build up in my chest with it.
Oh yeah.
So, and I haven't done mushrooms to like try and alleviate that. But, does anyone work with anything like chemical wise? I mean, there's all kinds of actual pills like antidepressants and stuff like that they give people too.
One day maybe I will delve into the research with that a little bit more. But well, that is to say it all.
Yeah.
But being that my bag in this is more trying to keep people on the job. And right now, even with the legality of cannabis in America, most municipalities. I mean, I know there's some that are changing their rules around to where.
Are they?
Yeah, there's actually quite a few that are like, oh well, you do it on your own time. You do it on your own time. But for the most part, I mean, I don't even look into it if that's something that someone wants to look into.
Right.
My big thing is more. I'm not anti-medication, but I think if someone can get through it without it, then I think that's probably the best way to go. And ultimately, I try to lean people more towards get it out. Don't try to better yourself by putting something else in there.
Right. Well, you're also dependent on that. Then.
Right.
If you don't have it, it could be worse.
Get it out. Talk to a few people, and that's the biggest thing with me. It's like, hey, there's a lot of resources there, or there's a lot of doctors out there. There's a reason. There's so many doctors. It's because, for one, not everyone can see not one person can see everybody, but two, not everyone's for everybody.
Right. Now, were you a guy that before you had gone to therapy? Like, I know that. At some point in my life, someone said something about therapy, maybe not for me. And I always thought it was, I know when I was younger, I thought it was strange, how would going to talk to someone about my problems, like just have a talk, help? but I was a kid. I didn't know shit.
Right, yeah.
And it does help. I mean, I have conversations with people that after the conversation that, we just have a podcast and the person's like, man, that was fun. I had a good time having that conversation. And I think some of it's, like I said, from the fact that you don't have eye-to-eye conversations with people.
Right.
And then you all of a sudden do. And I mean, if you think about your conversations just in general, for most things, how old are you?
I'm 39.
39, right? So most of your life, you've had if you had to call customer service, you're calling them on the phone. If you got everything is done some other way. If it's a work situation, you're calling in. We're not doing an eye-to-eye conversation. For hundreds of thousands of years, the only way that we did communicate was eye to eye, and that's the thing. So something's missing, and then, in the therapy situation, I think that there's a bonus to it because you're literally paying someone to, hey, could you pay attention to this problem that I've got right here, right now? I've got an issue, and I need you to analyze it, and it's an unbiased, you would not have the same results if you're like, hey, honey, can you just listen to my problems for a little bit? Because you're in a biased situation. You know me. You have a stake in whether I can function or not. This other person has nothing to say except for what they think will help your situation.
Right, and that is true. But the other side of that is, heck, sometimes maybe that's all you need. Maybe sometimes all you need is someone just
right. Go get a beer and
can you listen to me for a little bit?
Right.
And that's something else that I try to tell everyone as well is when I'm big on peer support.
I think it's
which to me is nothing more than what we as first responders have been doing for years anyway, especially the fire service.
Right.
Because what do we do every morning? We sit around the coffee table, we laugh, we joke, hey, what happened the night before? Or what do I need to look for today? Is anything missing? Is anything broken? That's peer support.
Yeah, right. Well, I was always big, and I should extend it for all the time, but I got divorced right after my injury, and I had my daughter was 3.5, and my boys were 1.5 years old, and since they were alive, I had never been out of the house without them, and I was getting divorced, and I wasn't seeing them on the regular. It was sometimes a week or so every time I'd see them, and I was missing them terribly. Then I got visitation, and when we got through the divorce situation, my kids were 6, 7, that kind of age, and we had the visitation set up where certain holidays you were flip-flopping. So I'd have them for Christmas, and then she'd have them for New Year's, sort of thing like that. Or, she'd have them for Thanksgiving, and I'd have them for spring break. Well, it was weird especially with social media, to see everybody having their Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm sitting at home by myself with no kids, no one around. I'm one day I had a family and everything else, and then boom, it was all gone. So, on social media, I always put out there, and it's sincere, if you're ever in a situation where you're lonely, you're going through, I'm not just looking for, lonely women, here, contact me on social media. I'll give you my phone number. You can give me a call. We can meet up, whatever you want. I'm not doing it because I'm personally lonely by the time I was doing it, because I started to make plans. I would go to my aunt's for Thanksgiving and stuff like that. But I will make time to talk to somebody because...
You've been there.
Yeah, that lonely feeling sucks. And it is awesome to have something. And there's people out there that, we're finding out now, autism spectrum and stuff like that, that socially they're not that great. So if that's your problem, but you still realize that you need someone to talk to, hey, give me a call. I'll talk to you if I got time. I'll do everything I can. And I can always make time. I can always be a guy that, I don't sleep that much. 10:30 at night, give me a call, let's chit-chat for a while. I got buddies that call, and we have big, drawn-out conversations about gun control and, just political crap all the time. But they turn into 3-hour conversations.
Oh, yeah.
And even if we don't agree, I got phone happy that I had the conversation with the guy and everything else, that's part of the reason I did the podcast was I realized after I was paralyzed that some of my favorite things to do were open a bottle of wine, have some decent food, and then have this like engrossing conversation about something. I'm the last guy in the world to, watch The Voice or some meaningless, just bullshit fucking TV show.
That's the problem is you can't watch something anymore without them trying to tell you how to feel about something.
Yeah. Now, so, Brian, what do you do outside of work? Like, for me, hunting, fishing, that kind of stuff was always my thing. I mean, I did things when I was younger, like box and stuff like that, just to, get a break from things. Most things that I did, I was never a guy that could go on a vacation and like sit in a lawn chair for a week. That's just not my way.
Yeah.
I need something to occupy my brain because I need a break from my life. What do you do outside work?
Well, really,
Bagpipes thing and everything else.
Yeah, that might have actually, believe it or not, that might have actually even been a contributing factor to where I am today.
Yeah.
Is because everything is mostly, unfortunately, fire service related. I mean, the pipes and drums, I belong to 2 bands.
Right.
I'm a band of brothers, pipes and drums, and of course now we're ramping up for our busy season being March.
Yeah.
With I also
Patty's Day stuff.
Yeah, also pipe with the AFFI, the State Honor Guard pipes and drums. And then other than that, it's really just, God, I just love letting my 6-year-old tell me what he wants to do.
Yeah.
I live out where we have pretty decent walking trails put out with the county and the I&M Canal, and
there you go. Okay.
And a lot of the time I was like, hey, can we go throw rocks? And that's really just, we're gonna go to the trail, we're gonna walk about a half a mile. We're going to get to some old, what used to be a decrepit boat landing.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of little rocks up there. He just wants to sit there and watch them splash in the water.
Chuck some rocks. Yeah, right.
Best time in the world.
Oh, I'll tell you what. I've only had, I only had a year and a half or so with my kids before I was paralyzed. I've had now 17 years being in a wheelchair. And I'm paralyzed from my chest down. So it's significant. And, but the very best, and I had a wonderful life before I was paralyzed. I mean, I had great friends. We ran around. We did all kinds of fun shit. The best time of my life has been with those kids. Just like doing the things with the kids. I've had the most fun. I've had, I did not have a relationship with my father that my sons have with me. We talk about things in depth. I mean, we really go into, like, my guys are smart kids. They want to be engineers. We're talking about, like, I'm like, all right, explain to me how you got a frickin' spaceship or a satellite, and it's in space. So nothing's out there. How does that thing propel itself? And they're like, and the physics of it and stuff like that. So, like, those are fun conversations to have. There's never a time where we're, like, driving in the car and, like, my kids are just looking at a phone, or like, we're talking about something all the time. Sometimes I'm sure they're tired of hearing my fucking voice, but other times it's just a good time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm very much the.
Just got one boy. Is that what you got there?
Yeah, just one boy. But I'm very much the middle ground parent with that, and I think that comes along with being 39 years old. I know what it's like to be without technology. Did most of my developmental childhood without the technology. And then I got to slowly work my way into where we are today. So I could be the father that's, you know what? No, put the electronics down. We're going to go do something. We're going to go fishing. We're going to go for a walk.
Yeah.
We're going to talk and all that. But then I'm also the dad that's, you know what? Go get your iPad. Let's play a game or something.
Right. I'll tell you what, I structured my life before I was injured where I always had something that was within 6 months. So, like, we would plug away with, construction's really weird, right? Like, in the dead of winter, you don't want to be doing that shit. You're not going to get anything done. It's freezing out. It's shitty. But when it's summertime, we were working 80 hours a week. I mean, I was doing sales afterwards and everything else. It was a shit ton of work. Right now, it's the same. Like, if I have, I've got 3 different clients looking for a home. I've got a couple listings and stuff like that. I got to keep it all straight all the time.
Right.
Anytime someone calls me, there's a chain of everything that's going on with every real estate deal. I keep every single email all until the job's closed, and then I wipe them all out of there. Like, it's a lot to think about on the regular. I coach youth wrestling. Every little guy that's there, I got to try and remember his name and everything else. It's a lot to do. It's awesome to like have something to look forward to in 3 months where I'm going to go to northern Minnesota and I ain't going to think about any of that shit at all.
Right.
I'm going to immerse myself in this other thing. Camping was like that too. Like, it was great to go camping. Now all of a sudden everything's different, right? You're in the campground, you're in the woods, whatever, but now you got to get wood. Now you got to, cook them. You got to do all these things. And then at some point you got to be like, what do we do for entertainment? We have no TV and all this other shit. So, like, you figure that out. So, I mean, I would think that for high stress gigs like first responders, having a hobby or having something that you go do, it's got to be immensely helpful to not have that. Shit, if it's going to play video games.
Oh, right, yeah. I mean, and a lot of the time you'll see a lot of us pick something stressful to do otherwise. But I mean, it's not the stress that matters.
No.
It's just the difference in it.
That's what I was the exact same way. So my job was stressful as far as that went. And then when my fishing, like, I didn't fish for like bluegills and bass. I was fishing for those muskies that are up there. And that is like, it is a test in, people don't get it. Like,
oh, it's a test to even get the lure out.
Right. Well, it's a physical test because I'm doing it. But like, you will spend 10 hours on the water chucking this piece of wood, chucking this piece of wood, chucking this piece of wood. And you got to be precise what you're doing. And then the plan is, in a 10-hour day, I'm hoping that 2 times in 10 hours I'm going to come in contact with this fish. Now, if my head is up my ass when that happens, it's over. I missed it.
Right, yeah.
That was my window and I blew it. So, like, you got to be able to be mentally focused for the 10 hours on what you're doing. It can't be on work. It can't be on your relationship. It has to be on what you're doing here. And I was good at that. I was really good at shutting everything down and doing this. We used to do a fly-in into Canada. Oh, man,
that would be amazing.
I strongly recommend it for anyone. The guys I went with on this trip, I would go with my ex-father-in-law. They were not, so there's guys that I consider fishermen, and then guys that fish. These guys were all just guys that fish.
No, right? that's me to a T right there.
So they were just guys, they worked at Xerox. What was funny about these guys was, I was a trade guy, general contractor, carpenter contractor. I was in really good shape. I'm lifting shit all the time. That's what I do for a fucking living. You guys are sitting at a desk. So, like, I would get up there and be, like, chopping wood and, like, carrying a motor. And they're like, damn, you're in shape. And I'm like, yeah, this is just what I do. But the fly-in situation there was we drive 18 hours, get to the end of roads. They put you in a pond jumper. And then they fly you 100 miles north of there, drop you off in a cabin with, I don't know what it is like now. I've been, out of that circuit for a while. But you could rent a satellite phone back then, so you could bring it with you. There's no cell service up there.
Right.
There was no phone in there. We had a red gas tank that was all rusted out in the bottom. If there was an emergency, you put the gas tank at the end of the pier, and then some other crew flying over, dropping people off would see that. That's a sign of emergency. And then they would call in the other place and say, hey, there's a problem here. And no bullshit. One guy threw his back out so bad, he spent the entire week in a bed in there. And then a group that was in before my group, guy died.
No kidding.
And they put him in his bed, wrapped him up in the blankets, and he was dead there for like 3 days.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that would be like, I'm asleep.
When your 911 is hoping for a plane to fly over and didn't have the wherewithal to look, hey, there's a duck. I wonder if anything's going on. Right.
So that was definitely something. But for these guys, it was. I was in Canada with my father also, and that was on a regular one where you like came in and you drove in there. The fishing wasn't as good, but this fly-in one, the fishing was so insane. They said, okay, meet us over at this island. They showed me on a map for lunch. I'm like, all right. There's pretty much 2 kinds of fish in the lake. There's walleyes and there's northern pike. Northern pike are like just for the sport of it, sort of thing. And walleye are for eating, sort of thing. Now, I like to eat northern pike too, but they're a bitch to clean. So I pull up to the island at noon, and they're like, where are your walleyes? I go, I don't fish for walleyes. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. We'll catch them. The guy went over on the point, stood on a rock, and caught 3 walleyes. Because we got 3 more now. No problem. I'm like, this is insane. This is ludicrous how this is. And they were all happy about, you know, how easy it is to catch fish. And I'm like, you know, it's nice that it's this easy, but that's what makes you not a fisherman. That's what makes you a guy that fishes.
Yeah,
Because this is not hard.
there's something to be said to be a guy that fishes, though.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not. I wasn't knocking it. I'm just saying, like, you know, what I just told this story on the podcast the other day, so I'm not gonna tell it again because someone listened. Like, oh, Greg, I hear about this guy's catching all these fish. But like, I outfished everybody there, you know, sort of thing. It was
Yeah.
like, you know, they're like, holy shit. And then I went there for 5 seasons, and I had the same group of guys. The next year, when I showed up, there was 2 guys that were like, because what we would do was there would be 6 guys there, and every day you fish with they pair you up with a different guy. So it was terrific, right? Because you got brand new stories, you got brand new conversations.
Right.
You're gonna hear about this guy's life, his whatever the hell's going on. And the next year, everyone had a tray for the day that they were gonna, you know, in the boat with me. I'm like, good, you know, we'll go over that. We'll try and refine it. You don't need that whole tray of stuff. But so those were terrific things to have for the week that we were there. But they were also terrific things to have. The day was super stressful, man. You'd be like, oh man, all I got is 1 more month, and I got this thing to look forward to go do. So yeah, for me that would be a big deal to have something to look forward to. But beyond that, so I mean, the 911 Let's Take a Walk. That's the that. So is it 911 Let's Take a Walk.com? Is that how someone would find it?
Well,
I'm gonna put a link. On
it's actually .org. And
.org,
like I said, I am an organization of one.
Yeah.
I'm really like we said, something to look forward to. Looking forward to the future. If it gets bigger, it gets bigger. If not, I'm happy being.
I think that'd be a fun camaraderie thing to do with other guys that were in that situation anyway, right?
And you know, it's funny because when I first started it, I was like, okay, here we go, gang of one. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And then I was amazed with how many people coming up being like, hey, how about what do you think of this? Maybe you should write about this. Maybe you should write about that. I'm like, well, I've written I've made quite a bit for it. I want to hear about you.
Sounds like you should do a podcast.
Yeah, I'm looking around right here. I see all this equipment. And
It's a little bit of equipment, it is. And I mean, I looked into it. Like I said, I realized that I really like to have conversations with people. So like, I don't make any money with the podcast. I like to get the subscribers. I absolutely am thrilled, and I appreciate everyone who listens to it. When I go to a wrestling tournament, someone's like, hey, listen to your podcast. I'm like, damn, that's great, man. I'm thrilled that somebody's paying attention, because I'll be honest, it was a lot of equipment. It's actually a decent amount of work for me to edit everything out, and the audio when I put music and stuff to it and everything else. So it's great to hear that. I'm not doing it for dough, but with your situation, like, you could probably get a whole mess of people to come in, and I think it's different. Like, I would want to ever get the guy I had on mic. Like, he just was free with what he was talking about. Like, when he was like a captain, like, that he got to a thing, they went into town on some deal, and then the captain got killed, and he told the whole story. I didn't ask him to.
Right.
I would feel like I'd put someone on the spot to be like, hey, what traumatic thing happened to you?
Right.
But if it was a podcast that was, hey, man, we're going to talk about these things, like, you know, if something's bothering you, sort of thing. And then I would guess, I've got Stacy coming on tomorrow night, and we're going to get political. We're going to talk about healthcare. We're going to talk about, she's been in the healthcare industry for a very, very long time.
You might as well book a second or third.
Yeah, you know what? And for me, that's why I like the podcast, because there is no time limit. I've had podcasts that have gone almost 3 hours. I always shoot for at least an hour, because you can't cover anything unless you at least do that.
Right, yeah.
But there's nobody that's been on my podcast, and I'm telling you, nobody that I wouldn't have back in a heartbeat. I had one that I was like not afraid of the conversation, because I'd been out with the guy for a beer, and he was a nice guy, but he was the guy that was listening to my podcast, and I'm like, hey man, you're in. He was like, he's kind of a train historian, like he loves the railroad, but he was like, oh, let's do a podcast. I'm like, I was thinking to myself, how am I going to fit an hour of trains. I know shit about trains. We did 2 hours, and I was like, oh my god, it's been 2 hours.
Oh, all you have to do is look on YouTube. Look on YouTube
Yep.
and see. Type in trains, and it's not the number of videos you find. It's how intense the guys are that are talking about it.
People love shit like that. So that's why I did the podcast under the, I generally look at the general population and think they're pretty fucking stupid. But everybody knows something about something. Some things you're forced into. I had a mom whose son was nonverbal autistic. Now, she knows everything about the different programs, like she had him in like a day program so she could go to work. She had him in like a school program until he was like 20. Like all this stuff that goes on, she knew all about it, not because she wanted to. She was
Right.
forced into the situation. I know a shit ton about fucking wheelchairs. I don't know anything about a wheelchair before I was paralyzed. That's not my thing. So everyone's got something they know something about. Whether it be a hobby, whatever it is, they get delved into it and they know about it, and it's fun for me to hear about those things. Like, I mean, I would not. Most of the firemen that I've run across, they're just kind of happy, drunky kind of guys that are having a good time. Like it seems like a fraternity of fun things to do. Like,
And for the most part, it absolutely is. And for me, like I'd go out with my friends. I'd be the guy. Hey, dude, you're single. Go talk to her. And he's like, he's like,
right.
I don't want to go talk to her. I'm like, well, screw it, I will. I'm like, hey, I'm married, but this guy back here.
Yeah, right. I mean,
He's like, how do you do that? I'm like, because I got nothing to lose. I'm not trying to take him home. But
the fire department that you're working with, do they do the thing? Do you stay there for the day? Like, is it a
yeah, I'm there for 24 hours at the bare minimum, 24 hours.
See, you're almost forced into a social situation.
You better learn to like the people you're with.
Yeah, you're playing dominoes or cards or something with them to do something. Because there are nights where it's slow night, nothing's going on.
Right, yeah. Well, so, we do have beds to sleep in at night.
Oh, right. Yeah, I got that. But I mean, at least it's almost like a thing where you're going to hang out with some people, and you're not like on a factory line where it's like, I don't have time to talk to you, Frank.
Yeah, I don't stamp labels on cans for 12 hours, and every 5 minutes or so just glad
Exactly. So I mean, honestly, I always saw it as a great gig. From the outside, and I would think most people would think that, okay, first it's probably dangerous because you could fall off something, you could, something, you're going to go into a fire, that's going to be dangerous, sort of thing, physical things. But I don't know if everybody would put the mental aspect to it, and there's probably a huge mental aspect to it.
And a lot of people don't, because you would be surprised how many times. Ask a fireman, ask an EMS person, ask a cop, ask a soldier. And I say soldier for all military. I'm a military family, so I'm not trying to insult the Marines
I'm a military family too. My dad was a Marine and my grandmother was a Marine.
Yeah. I just say soldier generically because for the most part, everyone in my family was Army.
There you go.
That's not an insult to the sailors, the airmen, or the Marines.
Sure.
But you'd be surprised how many people, the public, say, oh, and I even, I believe there's even a story still on my blog about this. It's, oh, you're insert first responder here. What's the worst thing you've seen?
Right. That's a normal question.
Right, that's a normal question. Dude, you must have seen some shit. What's the worst thing or military's even worse. Have you ever killed anyone?
Yeah, that's a real fuced up question.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking me to relive the worst moment of my life for your enjoyment.
I don't know if people even see it that way.
And that's just it. That's the main purpose of the website.
Okay.
It's not necessarily if you want help. There's help available, and there's some stuff that I found to maybe help you along. If there's nothing there for you, give me a holler. We'll look together.
Yeah.
And that's the meaning of the slogan. If you're not okay, I'll walk with you until you feel better.
Sure.
But the main point is awareness.
Yeah.
It's not going away. and trying to pretend like you're some salty little prick that nothing ever gets to you, and the people who want to seek treatment, they're the weak ones, you know. It's not making it go away.
I would hope that that is a societal situation or attitude that's going away. That, you know, people. So I would have looked at something like 20 years ago if someone would have said, "Hey, let's go do some yoga." I would have looked at them like, "What the fuck's wrong with you?"
No, I would have said that 10 years ago until someone conned me into doing it for the first time.
Yoga's awesome, man. I had a yogi guy that's like really good yoga instructor on the podcast. I took my kids to him. My boys are wrestlers. They work an intense workout. They were like, it was really cool. I liked it. And I looked around at it and I thought to myself, every single person over 30 years old should do some yoga. Just because you're getting yourself into positions you're not normally getting into, you're squatting down, you're just doing things like you're working on your balance. You see all these old people that couldn't like pick up.
And it's the stretching.
Right.
Oh my God, stretch for a half hour a day.
Awesome.
Watch the pain go away.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, no. So, honestly, Brian, you sound like I just met you today. You sound like a guy that's actually probably a good guy to talk to begin with. So, that's great that you're out there and you put yourself, in that situation. And you're a resource that, that's putting, like you said, on the website, you got other stuff. So that's great, man. That's terrific. Anything else you want to cover? We're like an hour and 30 minutes into it. Is there anything else that you want to make sure you get out there?
I think people have listened to me just about long enough, but I just can't say it enough. It's all about awareness. Even if you feel that you're okay, come check it out. You may discover something, and if you are okay, then you'll definitely discover something to help somebody else.
Right.
I mean, we get into being first responders to help the public. Sometimes the best thing we can do is help ourselves and help one another.
I like the angle where you're talking about, having spouses and people that are, because maybe that'll help them know how to deal with that person. Maybe the guy's not a bad guy. Maybe he's just dealing with something that he's got to get past, and he can make it all better if he could.
Absolutely. A lot of the time, we get caught in the cycle of yelling. Well, she's yelling, so I'm going to yell louder. And now, well, he's yelling louder, I'm going to yell louder. Let's get to the cause of it.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, sometimes the cause might be you're an asshole.
Yeah.
But there may be something else to it, and there may be something that you can go to. Even my wife, she went to a few sessions. She went to a few sessions with me. She went to a few on her own. So I mean, just because you're like, okay, great, this is awesome. I'm feeling a lot better. What used to bother me, it's still there, but I can deal with it. Well, you've got a family. They're dealing with it too, and they're dealing with it in their own way.
Right. So I'll put the link to that up there, and then do you have like a Facebook page too, or something like that?
Facebook. We are on. I am on Facebook. It's under the same name, just 911. Let's take a walk.
Yeah, I'll find it. I'll find it out there, and I'll put the link on the two things. But well, cool, man. Thanks for listening. If there's anything, I really want to encourage people to, put comments on the video. I don't know if you've checked out the podcast or subscribed to it, but if you subscribe to it, I will hook you up with Brian if, I get something on there that says, hey, this is my issue or something like that, or, could you have talked about this? And then, again, I've never had anyone on that I wouldn't have on again. So if someone's like, hey, I got this issue, and you feel like there's something else you got to, something to say, come back.
Yeah.
Talk again.
Yeah, and always remember, Brian sitting right here isn't a professional, but I do know a
For
few.
some people, that's probably helpful, like just to talk to another dude.
Exactly. I'm just one of the guys who's willing to lend an ear.
Right. Cool. Well, thanks, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We're done.